Some mornings begin before the sun is ready. The room is quiet, almost unfinished, as if the day itself is still deciding whether to arrive. In that silence, many people reach for the same small ritual. A cup is lifted, steam rises. A familiar scent fills the air, warm and slightly bitter, grounding and gentle at the same time. For a brief moment, the world slows down. Thoughts gather themselves. The day feels possible. Coffee often enters our lives this way, not as a luxury, not as a historical artifact, but as a companion. It sits beside us during early mornings and long nights. It keeps us awake when we are tired, and sometimes keeps us company when we are alone. It appears in moments of work, of study, of conversation, of waiting. We drink it quickly or slowly, without thinking much about it at all. But have you ever paused to wonder why this drink, more than so many others, became so deeply woven into our lives? Why does the smell of coffee feel like a beginning? Why do cafes feel like places where time behaves differently, where strangers sit near each other in quiet agreement, sharing a space without needing to speak? Why does a simple cup carry such emotional weight, enough to comfort, to focus, to connect? Coffee is not just something we consume. It shapes how we move through the day. It influences how we work, how we talk, how we think. For some, it is a necessity. For others, a pleasure. For many, it is both. And yet, we rarely stop to ask how this small, dark liquid came to hold such power over human routines and emotions. Imagine for a moment a world without it. No cafes on street corners. No quiet hum of espresso machines. No shared breaks defined by a cup held between two hands. No late nights softened by warmth. No early mornings rescued by a familiar taste. How different would our days feel? How differently would we gather or work or even think? The answer is not simple, because coffee is not simple. Its story is not only about taste or energy, it is about human longing, about restlessness, about the desire to stay awake, to stay present, to push beyond natural limits when life demands more than our bodies easily give. Long before coffee became a global habit, humans struggled with the same questions we face today. How do we endure long hours of labor? How do we stay alert through the night? How do we remain focused in a world that constantly asks for our attention and effort? These are not modern problems. They are deeply human ones. Every culture has searched for ways to sharpen the mind and strengthen the body. Some turn to herbs, others to rituals, others to prayer or movement. Coffee would eventually become one of these answers, but not because it was destined to, not because it was inevitable. It became important because people needed it and because it fit quietly into the rhythm of human life. What makes coffee unusual is not only its effect, but its adaptability. It can be bitter or smooth, strong or gentle. It can be shared or smooth, strong or gentle. It can be shared or solitary. It fits into grand cities and small villages, into moments of celebration and moments of exhaustion. It asks very little of us, and yet gives something many people feel they cannot do without. Think about how often coffee marks a transition, the start of the day, the pause between tasks, the meeting before a decision, the conversation that needs time, the break that allows us to breathe. In many lives, coffee does not simply fill time, it shapes it. And yet, despite how normal it feels now, coffee was once unfamiliar, strange, even unsettling. There was a time when its effects were unknown, its meaning unclear. A time when people argued over whether it was helpful or dangerous, natural or suspicious, acceptable or forbidden. The comfort we associate with coffee today was not always there. It had to be learned, earned, negotiated. Behind every ordinary object that becomes part of daily life, there is usually a long period of uncertainty, a stretch of time when people argue, resist, misunderstand, and slowly adapt. Coffee is no exception. Its journey into human culture was shaped by curiosity and fear, by need and resistance, by chance and choice. But before conflict, before commerce, before cafes and rituals, there was something simpler. There was fatigue. There were people who needed to stay awake when the body wanted rest. There were nights that demanded attention. There were journeys that lasted longer than expected. There were prayers, conversations, and labors that stretched beyond daylight. There were moments when sleep was a luxury, not an option. In those moments, humans have always searched for help. Sometimes help comes in dramatic forms. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through observation and habit. Often, it begins with something small, almost unremarkable, noticed by someone paying attention to their surroundings. Coffee's story begins there, in attentiveness, in noticing how the natural world affects the human body, in watching, experimenting, and remembering. It begins not in grand halls or written records, but in lived experience. It is easy today to think of coffee as a product, something grown, processed, sold, branded, but long before it was traded, it was encountered. Long before it was measured, it was felt. Its earliest role was not to create culture, but to respond to it, to fit into lives already shaped by movement, belief, and survival. That is why coffee's history is not only the story of a plant or a drink, it is the story of human adaptation, of how people respond when life asks more of them than they feel ready to give. As we sit with a cup in hand, it can be tempting to imagine that coffee has always been here, waiting for us. But it was discovered, slowly and imperfectly, by people who could not know what it would become. People who were simply trying to get through their days and nights with a little more clarity, a little more strength. Their world was quieter in some ways, harsher in others. Their problems were different in form, but familiar in spirit. They needed endurance. They needed alertness. They needed something to help them remain present in demanding circumstances. Coffee did not arrive as a solution announced to the world. It emerged as a response, shaped by necessity and curiosity, refined by use, and carried forward by human connection. The cup you hold today is the result of countless small decisions made across generations. Decisions to notice, to try, to share, to repeat. Decisions shaped by environment, belief, and need. Decisions made without knowing where they would lead. This is why coffee feels personal, even universal. It belongs to no single culture, yet carries traces of many. It speaks softly of long nights and early mornings, of focus and fatigue, of solitude and gathering. And beneath its familiarity lies a long, layered human story, one that began far from modern kitchens and cafes. A story rooted in survival, observation, and the quiet hope that tomorrow's demands could be met with a little more wakefulness than today allowed. That story did not begin with comfort or routine. It began with need. And to understand coffee, we must first step into a world before it was known, into the lives of people who had not yet tasted it, but who were already searching for something like it. Before coffee entered human life, the world moved at a different pace. Days were shaped almost entirely by the sun, and nights belonged to darkness and rest. When light faded, work slowed. When exhaustion arrived, there were few ways to resist it. The human body followed natural limits closely, not because people wanted to, but because there were few alternatives. In many parts of the world, staying awake after nightfall was difficult and often risky. Firelight was weak and precious. Candles and oil lamps were limited. Long hours of wakefulness demanded effort, and effort demanded strength. Sleep was not just rest, it was survival. And yet, even in this world, there were moments when sleep was not enough or not allowed. Some people needed to pray through the night. Others needed to guard, travel, study, or work while others rested. Shepherds watched over animals in darkness. Traders moved along long routes that did not respect daylight. Religious communities gathered for extended rituals that demanded focus and presence. Life did not always pause when the sun went down. In these moments, fatigue became an obstacle, not a moral weakness, but a physical boundary. And humans, as they always have, looked for ways to gently push against that boundary. Long before coffee, people turned to what they had around them. Leaves were chewed, roots were brewed, seeds were crushed and mixed with water. Across different cultures, humans experimented with plants not out of curiosity alone, but out of necessity. They observed how certain things made the body feel warmer, sharper, more alert. Knowledge passed quietly from one person to another through habit rather than writing. In the slow, observational world, discovery did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded gradually. Someone noticed that an animal behaved differently after eating a certain plant. Someone else noticed that a particular berry seemed to reduce hunger or delay sleep. These observations were not immediately understood, but they were remembered. Coffee's earliest beginnings belonged to this kind of noticing. In the highlands of eastern Africa, where the land rose and fell in green waves and the climate encouraged rich plant life, small red berries grew on evergreen shrubs. To the untrained eye, they were unremarkable. They did not look powerful. They did not demand attention. They simply existed, part of the natural background of daily life. People living near these plants did not see them as commodities or drinks. They saw them as part of the landscape. Animals ate them, birds carried them. Seasons passed, and the shrubs remained. At some point, humans began to pay closer attention. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps hunger, perhaps the quiet habit of watching animals and learning from them. However it happened, people began to experiment with these berries. They chewed them, mixed them with fat, or crushed them into simple forms that could be carried during long journeys. The goal was not pleasure. It was endurance. What they noticed was subtle but important. After consuming the berries, the body felt different. Fatigue softened. Awareness sharpened. Hunger seemed less urgent. The night felt more manageable. This was not magic. It was experience. Early use of coffee was not about taste. In fact, taste likely mattered very little. The value of these berries lay in what they allowed people to do. They extended waking hours. They made long stretches of attention possible. They helped the body keep going when rest was not an option. This knowledge spread quietly, carried by people who moved through the land. Traders, travelers, herders, and pilgrims shared habits as much as goods. They shared what worked. They shared what helped. Over time, preparation changed. Chewing raw berries was practical but limited. As people experimented, they discovered that heat transformed the plant. Roasting altered flavor and effect. Brewing made it easier to consume and share. What began as a functional substance slowly became something more social, but in these early stages, coffee was still closely tied to need. Communities that adopted it did so because it fit into their lives. It supported long periods of work. It aided religious devotion. It helped people remain present when presence mattered deeply. Coffee did not replace sleep, but it postponed it, giving humans a little more control over their own limits. As knowledge spread, coffee began to move beyond its place of origin. Not suddenly and not intentionally, it traveled the way many human practices do, to proximity and repetition. One group learned from another. One habit became familiar, then normal. The world into which coffee entered was already deeply connected by movement. Trade routes crossed deserts and seas. Pilgrimage paths carried people across regions. Ideas traveled alongside spices, fabrics, and stories. Coffee joined this flow not because it was rare, but because it was useful. In communities where night prayers were central, coffee found a place. In places where conversation and learning extended late into the evening, it became welcome. Slowly, it began to shift from a practical aid to a shared experience. Drinking coffee created space. When people gathered to drink it, they stayed longer, they talked more, they listened. The drink itself did not force this change, but it allowed it. By easing fatigue, coffee opened time and time allowed connection. This was an important transition. Coffee was no longer only about surviving long hours. It became part of how people related to each other. It supported discussion, storytelling, and reflection. It helped communities stay awake together, not just alone. As its role expanded, so did its meaning. Coffee was no longer simply consumed. It was prepared with care, shared intentionally, offered to guests. It became associated with hospitality and attention. Still, its spread was slow and uneven. Many people had never heard of it. Others viewed it with curiosity or suspicion. A substance that altered the body, even gently, always raised questions. Was it safe? Was it appropriate? Did it interfere with natural rhythms meant to be respected? These questions did not arise immediately. They came later when coffee moved into new cultural spaces where its purpose was not immediately clear. In its earliest homes, coffee was understood through use, not theory. But as it crossed boundaries, interpretation became necessary. What had once been a quiet solution to fatigue now stood at the edge of something larger. Coffee was leaving the realm of local knowledge and entering a broader world of belief, regulation, and debate. Its effects could no longer be ignored. Its presence demanded explanation, and explanation invites disagreement. As coffee continued its journey outward, it would soon encounter resistance as much as acceptance. People would argue about its nature, its morality, its place in society. What began as a tool for endurance would become a subject of controversy. But at this point in the story, coffee was still fragile, not yet global, not yet powerful. It depended entirely on human hands to carry it, prepare it, and share it. It existed because people found meaning in what it allowed them to do. Before it could transform cities or economies, it first had to survive skepticism. Before it could become a symbol, it had to be understood. And so, quietly, steadily, coffee moved forward, crossing regions and cultures, carried by people who needed it, trusted it, and shared it without knowing how far it would go. Its next chapter would not be gentle. With wider reach came fear, control, and conflict. The same qualities that made coffee valuable would soon make it dangerous in the eyes of those who feared change. As coffee moved farther from its place of origin, it began to encounter something inevitable in human history: fear of the unfamiliar. What had once been a quiet aid to endurance and focus now appeared in new societies where its effects were not yet understood, and where every substance that altered the body was viewed through the lens of belief, order, and control. Coffee did not announce itself loudly. It arrived quietly, carried by traders and travelers, introduced into homes and communal spaces. At first, it was simply another drink, but its influence was subtle and persistent. People stayed awake longer. Conversations stretched deeper into the night. Minds felt sharper, more alert. And slowly, coffee began to change how time itself was used. This was where tension began. In many societies, waking hours were carefully structured. Work, prayer, rest, and social life followed rhythms shaped by tradition and authority. Anything that disrupted those rhythms raised questions. Coffee did not intoxicate in the obvious way that alcohol did, but it stimulated. It encouraged wakefulness, discussion, and reflection. And these effects made some people uneasy. Religious leaders, political authorities, and social guardians all asked similar questions. Did coffee encourage excess? Did it distract from devotion, or did it support it? Did it strengthen the mind, or did it invite disorder? Was it a blessing or a temptation? There were no simple answers. In some communities, coffee was embraced for its ability to support long prayers and study. It helped worshipers remain attentive during extended rituals. It allowed scholars to read, write, and debate late into the night. In these contexts, coffee felt aligned with discipline and devotion. In others, the same effects were seen as dangerous. A drink that kept people awake also kept them talking. It created spaces where ideas could circulate freely, where people gathered not under strict supervision but by choice. Coffee houses, where they appeared, became places of conversation, debate, and exchange. This was new. Unlike taverns, which were associated with intoxication and loss of control, coffee houses encouraged clarity. People drank coffee to stay alert, not to escape. They talked about religion, politics, trade, and daily life. News traveled quickly in these spaces. Opinions formed and spread. For authorities accustomed to controlling information, this was unsettling. Coffee was not just a drink anymore. It was a catalyst. In several regions, attempts were made to ban or restrict it. Religious rulings questioned its permissibility. Political leaders worried about gatherings they could not easily regulate. Some claimed coffee led to moral decline. Others argued it distracted people from proper duties. These moments of resistance were not driven by ignorance alone. They reflected a deeper truth about human societies. Anything that changes how people think together challenges existing power structures. Coffee did not overthrow governments, but it altered daily behavior in small, cumulative ways, and small changes, repeated across populations, matter. Despite bans and criticism, coffee continued to spread. This persistence reveals something important. People did not drink coffee because they were told to. They drank it because it fit their lives. It helped them work, think, and connect. Attempts to remove it often failed because they ignored lived experience. Over time, opposition softened. Some leaders reconsidered, others adapted. Coffee houses were regulated rather than eliminated. Religious opinion shifted as familiarity replaced suspicion. What was once feared slowly became normalized. But normalization did not mean stagnation. As coffee entered new regions, it transformed again. Preparation methods changed. Social customs formed around it. In some places, coffee became formal and ceremonial. In others, it remained casual and practical. Each culture shaped coffee to fit its own values, rhythms, and needs. In Europe, coffee arrived into societies already undergoing change. Urban centers were growing, literacy was increasing, scientific curiosity was expanding. Coffee found fertile ground in this environment, not because it caused these changes, but because it supported them. Coffee houses became places where merchants exchanged information, writers debated ideas, and thinkers challenged assumptions. They were imperfect spaces, often excluding women in certain classes, but they played a role in shaping public discourse. Coffee did not create curiosity, but it gave curiosity a place to sit and stay awake. Of course, this influence was not universally welcomed. Critics warned that too much thinking led to unrest. That constant discussion undermined tradition, that alert minds questioned authority. In response, coffee was sometimes framed as dangerous, foreign, or disruptive. But these labels rarely lasted. As generations grew up with coffee as part of daily life, fear lost its force. What once felt threatening became ordinary. As coffee became more accepted, it also became more commercial. Demand grew, cultivation expanded, trade networks adjusted to include it. Coffee was no longer just shared among neighbors or communities, it became a product that connected distant regions. This shift carried consequences. Where coffee was grown, labor intensified. Where it was consumed, habits solidified. Coffee linked people who would never meet, binding their lives to trade and consumption. The drink that once served small communities now connected continents. And yet, even as it became global, coffee never lost its personal quality. People still drank it for the same reasons they always had: to stay awake, to focus, to share time. The conflicts surrounding coffee did not disappear completely, they changed shape. Moral debates gave way to economic ones. Questions about permissibility shifted toward questions of profit and control, but the core tension remained. Coffee sat at the intersection of body, mind, and society. It asked an ongoing question: how much wakefulness is enough? How much productivity is healthy? How do we balance endurance with rest? These questions did not belong to any one era. They followed coffee wherever it went. By the time coffee had firmly established itself across much of the world, it was no longer controversial in the way it once had been. It was expected, normal, even necessary. The fears that once surrounded it faded into memory, replaced by routines and rituals, but its power to shape human behavior never vanished. Coffee had transformed from a local aid into a global habit, from a survival tool into a cultural symbol, from something questioned and banned into something quietly relied upon. The world that emerged alongside coffee was faster, more connected, more demanding. People worked longer hours, information traveled more quickly, conversation expanded beyond private spaces into public ones. Coffee did not cause all of this, but it accompanied it, supported it, and adapted to it. As the modern era approached, coffee was ready. It had survived fear, resistance, and misunderstanding. It had proven its usefulness again and again, and it had learned how to fit into many different lives without losing its essence. The next chapter of Coffee's story would not be defined by survival or conflict, but by reflection, by asking what this long journey reveals about who we are and why we continue to reach for the same cup day after day. Today, coffee is everywhere, and because of that, it often feels invisible. It waits for us in kitchens and offices, on street corners and highway stops, in small cups and large ones. It arrives without ceremony, already understood, already accepted. Few people stop to question it. Fewer still pause to consider how deeply it has shaped modern life. And yet, if we look closely, coffee is still doing what it has always done. It helps us manage time. Modern life asks a great deal of the human mind and body. Work rarely ends with the setting sun. Messages arrive at all hours. Deadlines stretch across days and time zones. Attention is constantly demanded, divided, and redirected. In this environment, coffee feels less like a choice and more like a companion we lean on to keep pace. But coffee is not only about productivity, it never has been. Cafes remain places where people sit without urgency, even in fast cities. Friends meet over coffee, not to rush, but to pause. Conversations unfold slowly, protected by the shared understanding that a cup takes time. In a world that often measures value by speed, coffee quietly insists on duration. This is one of its contradictions. Coffee accelerates the mind, yet often slows the moment. In many cultures, offering coffee is still an act of welcome. It signals attention. It says, "Stay a while." Even when life is busy, the gesture remains. Coffee creates a small space where presence matters more than efficiency. At the same time, modern coffee culture reflects modern anxieties. There are debates about quality and origin, about ethics and sustainability, about health and dependence. People argue about how much coffee is too much, about whether it replaces rest rather than supporting it. These conversations echo older fears, reshaped for a different age. The difference now is awareness. We know more about our limits, and we also know how often we push past them. Coffee sits at that edge. It helps us meet demands, but it also reminds us that those demands exist. The cup in our hand can feel like both support and signal. What is striking is that despite all the changes in technology, economy, and culture, our relationship with coffee remains deeply human. We still drink it for focus, for comfort, for connection. We still gather around it. We still associate it with beginnings, with effort, with thought. Coffee has not lost its emotional meaning. If anything, it has gained new layers. For some, it represents independence, the first drink of adulthood. For others, it marks routine, stability in an unpredictable world. For many, it is memory, a parent at the kitchen table, a late night of study, a conversation that mattered. These meanings are not advertised or standardized. They are personal. Coffee becomes part of the story we tell ourselves about how we move through life. Looking back across this long journey, coffee reveals something simple and enduring about humanity. We are always negotiating with our limits. We search for balance between rest and effort, solitude and connection, discipline and comfort. When we find something that helps, we carry it forward, shape it, argue over it, and eventually make it our own. Coffee was never just about staying awake. It was about staying present. From its earliest use as a tool of endurance, to its role in shared spaces of thought and conversation, to its place in modern routines, coffee has followed the same quiet purpose. It helps humans meet the world as it is with a little more clarity, a little more warmth. The next time you lift a cup, you are not just participating in a habit. You are touching a long human story, one shaped by need, curiosity, fear, adaptation, and connection. A story that does not belong to any one place or time, but to people everywhere who have searched for ways to stay awake to their own lives. Perhaps that is why coffee endures, not because it is powerful, but because it fits so naturally into who we are. And maybe, in noticing that, we're invited to slow down, just enough to appreciate the ordinary rituals that quietly carry so much history within them. If this story made you pause, even briefly, you are already part of it.